flap, pustule, jowls, nugget, gurgle, smear, bulbous, pork.
If you hear certain words on the job site,
baloney,
work can be uncomfortable.
tender.
So at least get work gear that's comfortable. Timberland Pro work shirts, pants, and boots. Head to toe, Timberland Pro. Not uncomfortable.
Moist.
3, 2, 1.
Happy New Year. It's at 4 o'clock today. The league year in the NFL will start with
Kirk Cousins. He's getting paid.
A landmark deal. Sam Bradford is going to be joining the Cardinals.
Drew Brees gets a big new contract.
Jordy Nelson out. Jimmy Graham in.
800 Division I players transferred last year. Teach them how to quit.
4 years ago wins a national championship. 4 years later fired. That's college basketball. That's sports.
Arizona's goal is to say, I don't care NCAA, I don't care FBI. We're going to hang a banner. If you want to take it down in a month or two, go do it.
What you've seen may change your perception of any sporting event. Get this, shoot this.
Welcome to Outside the Lines. I'm Kate Fagan, sitting in for Bob Lee. NFL free agency begins in, 3 hours, and that's today's big story. The flag doesn't officially drop on free agent frenzy until 4, but this spring has already been a game changer for NFL contracts. Let's take a quick spin through the last few days, starting with quarterback Kirk Cousins, whose patience and appetite for risk paid off with a 3-year deal with the Minnesota Vikings worth a reported $84 million. Every dime supposedly guaranteed. Now, this deal inspired Seattle Seahawks receiver Doug Baldwin to place Cousins in a larger context. He tweeted, Kirk Cousins is a hero for all the young players that will follow after him. Now we need more players to bet on themselves until fully guaranteed contracts are the norm and not the exception. Now, Cousins' deal is the benchmark for players who have historically had to play year by year, if not even week by week. But, of course, plenty of deals are swirling around the league, especially among the quarterbacks. Case Keenum to the Broncos, Sam Bradford to the Cardinals, Teddy Bridgewater to the Jets. The Packers cut receiver Jordy Nelson and are set to sign tight end Jimmy Graham. Now, you get the picture. Now, is this just another offseason, or have NFL contracts shifted in an irreversible way? Also, what impact do these moves actually have on the field? Here to help us answer that question is ESPN NFL front office insider Bill Polian. So let's start on the field when it comes to Kirk Cousins. What impact does this move have?
Well, it gives the Vikings a strong-armed, experienced quarterback who, with that surrounding cast, probably should do better than he did in Washington. In fact, he's going to be expected to do a lot better than he did in Washington because he only played in one playoff game in Washington and lost that. So there are higher expectations in Minnesota. And, of course, with the money comes high expectations as well. Yeah, and that money, fully guaranteed, is groundbreaking in the NFL. Now, you've been in the position of offering players contracts, like let's say even Peyton Manning. Did you ever have to deal with considering fully guaranteeing a contract, and how would you have navigated that? Well, the agents asked for it every now and then, and the answer simply was no. And they accepted it. Now, this contract is being called fully guaranteed, but it probably hasn't been filed with the league office yet. Fully guaranteed, in the true sense of the word, means guaranteed for skill and injury. Mm-hmm. So let's make sure we understand what this fully guaranteed contract contains. If it is skill and injury, if it is a complete and total guarantee, or at least a 90% guarantee, as is being reported in some areas, then you got a groundbreaking contract, because these kinds of contracts have not existed for quite some time, really back to the USFL days when there was a competition between the two leagues. Rick Meyer was an anomaly. He really never made it as a quarterback, and he had, at one point, a fully guaranteed contract. But that was just an anomaly and didn't affect anyone else. People just dismissed it. Now, this guy's a quarterback. It's certainly possible. And in fact, it's likely. In fact, it's more than likely. I like our chances here. They're just escalating. That agents, if this is in fact guaranteed for skill and injury, will be asking for this for virtually every big-time quarterback who comes up. Not only the money, but the guarantee. Now, will it spill over into other positions? I kind of doubt it because, let's face it, the injury rate in football is 100%. Quarterbacks are the least injured of players, usually, other than kickers. So you can afford it a little bit more in terms of a quarterback.
Yeah.
Other position players, not so much.
Well, you mentioned the NFL office putting the rubber stamp on this contract. When does that happen? When is that the kind of information that we get?
They'll get it probably at 4 o'clock today or slightly before, and then they will, this is for every contract, not just this one. Right. Then they will go over it with a fine-tooth comb to make sure that it complies with all the rules. This, by the way, is a standard operating procedure with every contract, whether it's Kirk Cousins or the last guy who signed after the draft. They go over it to make sure that it subscribes both to the rules and to the rules of the salary cap. In this case, the salary cap comes into play because of the amount of money that's involved.
All right, we got a couple hours here until free agency officially opens. Anything you're expecting to see?
No, I think the market is going to simmer down a little bit. The market is in free agency is a clear bifurcation. Let's see. By Friday, the early signings will be over. In the early signing period, the agent gets his number. He just tells you this is what it's going to cost you, and you negotiate a little bit on terms of when the payment comes, but he's going to get his number. And then once, usually, generally speaking, by the time Friday comes, then the market will collapse. Right. Agents will be asking big numbers, but clubs will not be paying it because the marquee players in free agency are basically all gone as of now.
All right, Bill Polian, thank you for your time today.
My pleasure.
You like that? You like that?
The phrase can have different meaning to different people.
You like that? You like that? You like that? You like that?
You like that?
Let's go! Touchdown, George Reed!
You like that? You like that?
And joining us now to give us the bigger picture of how this offseason might impact the league, we are joined by Jason Reid of The Undefeated. Jason, how might Cousins' fully guaranteed deal, if it is fully guaranteed, impact future free agents?
Well, Kate, the hope will be that there'll be an effect for everyone. You know, the rising tide lifts all ships, and that players who in the past were not getting contracts guaranteed for both skill and for injury, that they'll get this. But I got to be honest with you, from talking with a lot of agents, there isn't really a feeling out there that this is going to have the impact that a lot of players hope that it will. And for this reason, Kate, there really was a perfect set of things coming together to help Kirk Cousins. You know, he was coming off 3 good years with the Redskins where he put up good numbers. He won a division. And the Minnesota Vikings were in a position where they basically have a Super Bowl roster, or a roster that can definitely challenge for a Super Bowl, but they were missing the quarterback. Case Keenum had a great year last year, taking nothing away from him. But Kirk Cousins has had 3 very good years. He's an above-average quarterback in his prime coming into the open market. And there was a team out there that looks at themselves as they're a Super Bowl contender, but they need a quarterback, or they wanted a quarterback who had a better body of work or a longer body of work to go into this season with and try to get to the Super Bowl. So all those things came together. You're not necessarily going to have that situation come together at all the other positions for all the other players.
Yeah, you're alluding to the variables that are at play for Kirk Cousins that are not necessarily easily replicable for other players. But here's a broader question, right? Like, if you look at the NBA, it was Kevin Garnett, a transcendent talent that really instituted a fully guaranteed contract on that side. What does it say about the NFL that it's a guy like Kirk Cousins who's, if you look at his numbers, is, you could say, more mediocre than transcendent? What does that tell you about the NFL?
Well, it tells you about the premium still at the quarterback position. You're talking about a guy who, yes, he doesn't have Aaron Rodgers numbers, doesn't have Tom Brady numbers, but he had very good numbers, better than average numbers, coming into a market where quarterbacks who are as good as Cousins, and I'm not saying he's the greatest quarterback in the league. Obviously, he hasn't proven that. But even guys who are like Cousins level don't generally go onto the open market because teams don't let those guys go. Kate, you mentioned Kevin Garnett, obviously a Hall of Fame player, a championship player, and we don't know where Kirk Cousins' career is going to go. And he hasn't been that type of player in the NFL relative to his position that Kevin Garnett was relative to his position in the NBA. But what you have is a guy who generally doesn't get into that position. Those guys don't get out there to a point where teams can even get them. So that's why I think when you talk about what this can be in the future, we really have to wait and see.
All right. Jason Reid of The Undefeated, thanks for your time today. All right, here's some more stuff that matters. Coming off a disappointing bronze medal finish in the downhill at last month's Olympics, Lindsey Vonn returned to her winning ways. Today in Sweden, she won her 4th straight World Cup downhill race to extend her women's world record to 82 career wins. That leaves her within 4 of tying all-time record for any skier. A little after 3 a.m. this morning in Nome, Alaska, musher Joar Olsum from Norway was pulled across the finish line by his team of Huskies to win the 46th edition of the Iditarod. For winning the 938-mile race through the Alaskan wilderness, Olsum receives $50,000. That's $21,000 less than last year's winner received due to a drop in sponsorship money. It hasn't been a great news week for Middle Tennessee basketball. The Blue Raiders were one of the glaring mid-majors left out of the dance. And now longtime coach Kermit Davis is reportedly leaving to become head coach at Ole Miss. Davis led Middle Tennessee to 3 tournament appearances and 6 regular season conference championships in 16 seasons. Now, and coming up, more news coming out of Baylor.
I just saved hundreds of dollars by switching to Geico. I feel like I'm on top of the world.
Disclaimer, you will not be transported to the top of the world. In the unlikely event you find yourself at the Arctic Circle, seek shelter from the elements immediately to avoid frostbite and or hypothermia. Geico will not be responsible if you find yourself in a cave or crevasse with a lonely abominable snowman, who in all likelihood will force you to play games including but not limited to Go Fish, charades, Chinese checkers, or his personal favorite, Red Rover, send Yeti on over. Geico is not liable for any damages, either physical or emotional.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
Breaking news coming out of Waco. 3 players on the Baylor football team have been suspended because of allegations of sexual assault involving female members of the school's equestrian team. The Baylor football team was, of course, at the center of a sexual assault scandal during the past 2 years, costing football coach Art Briles his job. That scandal resulted in 11 lawsuits filed by a total of 23 women. On Tuesday, Baylor president Linda Livingstone released a statement which read in part, quote, "The university's new leadership team is unwavering in our commitment to follow our well-documented Title IX policy and procedures in regards to reporting and responding to incidents of sexual assault." Outside the Lines reporter Paula Levine has extensively reported on Baylor and obtained a copy of the police report in this new case. She joins us now. Paula, tell us what you know.
Well, Kate, what we know is that this afternoon, Coach Rule is scheduled to have a press conference in Waco where he's going to announce that 4 players of the team will not be joining them for spring practice. 3 of those players are being held out and completely separated from team activities because of this ongoing sexual assault investigation. And they've actually been separated from the team since November of 2017 when these allegations first arose. Now, it's unclear what their role actually allegedly was in this sexual assault. And it's also unclear if they are among the 4 suspects named in a police report. And the police report, as I said, dates back to November of 2017. That case is currently being examined by the prosecutor's office. There's been no decision on charges yet. And the Title IX investigation at the school is ongoing. But they did want to make sure that people knew that they are taking action here and that these 3 players have not been part of the team and will not be part of the team until there's a decision made on this case.
Yeah, how has this news impacted the community at Baylor and in Waco?
You know, after everything Baylor has been through, after the investigation, after the scandal, the firing of Coach Briles and all of the lawsuits, I think there was a real anticipation that Coach Rule is bringing a new age and a new standard, and he said all the right things. He made all the right commitments, and I think there's a real sense of disappointment. At least I know personally, when we first heard about this, that was my first take. I was just really disappointed to hear that there was even an allegation of this happening, and I get a real sense from the Baylor community that they're disappointed that something like this has come up so soon, involving two women who are reported to be members of the equestrian team, so fellow student athletes, and multiple football players. And I think people are really hoping that that Baylor's doing the right thing. And so far, Baylor is indicating that it's followed the process, and we'll just have to see what happens.
All right. Paulo Levine, thanks for your time today. The NCAA has its branded March Madness. Then there's just the constant chaos that is college basketball off the court. One day before the NCAA tourney begins full force, we've got a slew of stories to wade through. Let's start here. A Pac-12 task force has recommended the end of the NBA's one-and-done rule, among other sweeping changes. The University of Georgia has reportedly offered its head job to former Ohio State coach Thad Matta. He apparently is going to turn it down. Arizona enters the tournament as a 4 seed, but lots of people like their chances. And this, Memphis coach Tubby Smith is reportedly out at Memphis. The top candidate is Lil Penny Hardaway. Let's not forget the last time we heard from Tubby Smith. He was saying this.
I've been in this business a long time. Never seen we had over 800 Division I players transfer last year. Over 800. Come on. Teach them how to quit. That's what we're doing. Things not going well, let's quit.
All right, here to help us make sense of the chaos, and ESPN college basketball reporter Myron Medcalf. All right, let's start here, Memphis Athletics. I got the statement from the athletic department here. After considerable deliberations in the best financial interest of the University of Memphis, an agreement of separation with Tubby Smith has been reached. Details are to be finalized, and no further comment will be offered. All right, what are you hearing out of Memphis?
Well, I had multiple conversations with Tubby's people over the last couple days. There was a meeting that was set up yesterday, called off at the last minute, rescheduled for this morning, but there was some back and forth about whether or not Tubby was going to get the $10 million he's owed. So I'm assuming they came to some sort of agreement on that. But from Memphis' side, attendance has been down. But the biggest thing I think is just this Penny Hardaway situation where he has definitely made it clear that he wants to coach that team, and he has so much support in that community. I think that's the guy they're going to insert into that position.
Yeah, I mean, for people of our age, having Penny Hardaway coaching that team, I mean, that's a draw for Memphis, as you mentioned. Now, Pac-12 coming forward with a task force making these recommendations, pretty sweeping, intense recommendations, eliminating the one and done, having college players have to commit to 3 years. I mean, you're down the list of what the Pac-12 has recommended. What impact does anything like that even have on the wider world of college basketball?
You know, if they're implemented, it would have sweeping, right. It'd be a sweeping change in college basketball. But even starting with the one and done, the NBA controls that. So I think these are great ideas, great concepts, but we're so far away from actually making these things happen. I think it's smart to, discuss the agents and whether or not they're going to continue to play a role in college sports. But the one and done, the NBA has to kickstart that conversation. And then from there, college basketball officials can make decisions.
Yeah, bouncing all around here. Now we're going to go down to Georgia, where it seemed as if Georgia's top selection for their head basketball job was going to be Thad Matta, who was at Ohio State, a lot of success at Ohio State. He apparently has turned it down. What are you hearing out of Georgia? Well,
I think Thad Matta is obviously a great coach, wants to get back into the game. I think what people don't realize, that is a difficult job. Everyone looks at Atlanta and goes, all you got to do is recruit the kids in Atlanta. They say it's the same thing at Illinois for the kids in Chicago, but it's hard to get those kids. And I think if you're Thad, you're not necessarily familiar with that region. You're putting yourself at a disadvantage, I think, to take that job. So from here, I think they'll call some big names. I wonder if they'll call someone that we work with, Tom Crean. That's a name I've heard. But Georgia, I think, will continue to go down the line to try to find the right person.
Yeah, now there's no new news out of what is happening in Arizona with head coach Sean Miller in regards to the FBI's investigation and the wiretaps, but there are a lot of people picking them as almost a dark horse / front runner in this NCAA tournament. What's going on with Arizona?
Well, they have DeAndre Ayton, so they can certainly win the whole thing. But I think what people need to realize is this thing is going to unfold in chapters. Right now, they're focused on the NCAA tournament. Maybe they win it. Every single recruit from the 2018 class is decommitted. They don't have any incoming players next year They lose 3 key players to the NBA, 2 other seniors. What does this team actually look like a year from now? That's a question that Arizona hasn't answered. So I think they're going to get through this phase of the NCAA tournament. And from there, we'll see what happens with Arizona basketball.
Yeah, there is a lot going on in the NCAA, even in addition to the games on the court. So, Myron Metcalf, thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, this time of year in college basketball always delivers epic moments alongside inspiring and heartwarming stories. And here's a preview for a story we're telling this weekend on E60 about Purdue big man Isaac Haas and his relationship with his sister, who deals with a debilitating form of epilepsy.
Comes to the Haas.
Haas on the turnaround. Boy, that's tough to stop.
The human body, as tough as it is, it's also really fragile.
Don't let me be you, Aaron.
What do you love about Isaac?
He is my best friend.
That's the scariest I've ever been in my whole life.
She is in constant danger. I'm working hard for